it's not the experience of happiness itself that is important. It is the understanding of its significance. And I quote that from, or paraphrase it from, Atmananda Krishnamenon. And the wisdom in what he's saying is that for true unconditional happiness, the experience is not important, obviously, because the experience we all experience all the time. It's necessary then to understand that in order to make happiness truly unconditional, it's the understanding of what happiness is that makes it unconditional. So we need to think of it like this: no matter where we go, no matter what we do, no matter who we think we are, everybody is in search of happiness. This has to be seen. We can't gaslight that idea with, oh no, because this person's obviously not doing this for happiness. The mother with 10 kids working every night to keep her kids happy is obviously not experiencing happiness. She is doing that for the sake of happiness. It's the sake of her kids' happiness. It's the sake of her happiness, because she knows when her kids go to bed at night and dream peaceful dreams, that makes her happy. So she might not be experiencing the level of happiness that you associate happiness with, but she is doing it for the sake of happiness. Whether it's happiness now or doing something as an investment for happiness in the future. Everything is in the progression of some form of happiness. It's very likely that if you do not know the source of happiness, then your happiness is temporary. Your happiness is limited. Your happiness can be disturbed. Your happiness comes from an experience of maybe you have a beautiful family, you have a beautiful job, you get to support your kids without worry. That is causeful happiness. That is happiness derived because of my external circumstances being in order, which is destroyed when my external circumstances are not in order, which means that we are then in this subtle resistance of the now, subtle resistance of our experience, because we're trying to protect that happiness. We're trying to sustain it. We don't want it to disappear. We don't want it to end. So do you see now how all people, if they do not know the source from which happiness arises, are in search of that source? We all want that form of joyful, unconditional happiness. And I don't mean, another disclaimer, that we're just this joyful, happy being every second of the day that doesn't feel any fluctuations of emotion. No, that's not true. Happiness, this is where it gets to the understanding of what happiness truly is. Happiness is not a state of mind. Happiness is not an emotion. Happiness is not some pleasant feeling that we feel when something good happens. Happiness is transcendent of human experience, and we need to realize this. It's transcendent of human experience because it is not an objective experience. Happiness, if we mistake happiness to be an objective experience, in other words, that is a phenomenal experience, an experience that requires an object, is an object, and is limited to an object, then we will experience limited happiness. Henceforth, it's not unconditional happiness. There's a condition there. So what we do is we superimpose a pleasant feeling on the experience of what happiness is, and believe that the present feeling that we feel in our body that makes us, oh, I like this, that is happiness itself, when it is not. So what happens then is that we have a perpetual search to find an object that can give us that feeling of happiness. Now, this is the actual experience of happiness. Happiness is the lack of resistance to our experience, period. That means that even if we feel stress, even if we feel anger, even if we feel frustration, we can be impersonal to that experience and still experience happiness. I know. How crazy is that? Because true happiness is not conditional. It's unconditional. So happiness is simply when we are not resisting our experience, which means that it is independent of all states of mind. And guess what? All your experience is states of mind, whether you're frustrated, angry, sad, blah, 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 whether you're walking to the shop, walking away from the shop, whether you've just run out of money, whatever it might be, it's always an experience of a state of mind. That which is transcendent of states of mind is the background of states of mind. In other words, that which all states of mind are contained. So in other words, it's like the screen on your phone All the states of mind are like the images that appear on the phone. But the screen itself is not a state of the phone. It's where all states of the phone are contained. Likewise, happiness, which we could also now consider to call the true natural state and condition of what you fundamentally are, is the place in which all states are contained. And where all these states are contained is what we call life. And life is made of your mind. Now, this is another topic. I'm not going to go into that right now, so don't debate me in the comments. Everything right now in your experience is simply a state that is passing through consciousness. And I say this as a concession, right, to those who say everything is consciousness. Yes, I agree. But listen to there's wisdom in knowing the state in which someone is talking to. And this is another thing I want to bring up. Some people have some crazy debates. Please, this is something I really want to get through to you. Listen to, if you really have such wisdom, then have the wisdom to listen to the state in which something is being transmitted or spoken. That's wisdom. Don't get lost and confused in, oh, but this meant this the other day and now it means that. I'm obviously talking to a very specific person right now. And those people will know because they'll understand exactly what I'm saying. And that's what's most important. If you want to go and talk about debates, we can do that in my community if you're genuinely interested. Now, aside from that, now we know that happiness is unconditional. Happiness, the actual experience, is unconditional because it cannot be derived from an object. When we find it in an object, perceived, whether that's even a spiritual book, a spiritual experience is also an object. Oh, I had this enlightening experience and now I don't have it anymore. Now my happiness is not there anymore. You see the logic? It's like, I had an objective experience that was spiritual. Now it's not an objective experience that is spiritual. My happiness was there, now it's not. All that's happened is that you had zero resistance to your experience. Now I want to ask you something specific. Have you ever had the experience of pure emotion, right? And you don't even know whether you're laughing or crying. Maybe it was after a breakup, maybe it was in grief, maybe it was some type of experience where you were crying and you can't even remember why you were crying. Or maybe you know why you were crying, but you don't know whether this is sad, laughter, happiness. It's just pure emotion. Now that is a perfect example in experience of unconditional happiness. It is raw emotion. It could be sadness, it could be anger, it could be frustration, it could be anything. If you are not resisting it, that is the experience that it will feel like. It will feel like pure emotion. It's got nowhere to go, no one to blame, no self to blame, no one to argue with. It's just pure emotion. And this is the point. That is happiness. It's emotion that we're not resisting. Any emotion that we resist is an emotion that will create suffering. This is what we have to see. So if there's any takeaway from this video, and I don't want to go on for too long because I think this is big enough of a seed to plant on its own. All experience takes place in pure consciousness, which is that place from which all states of mind appear. So happiness is the lack of resistance, which is the natural state of our mind. So the natural state of our mind is pure unconditional happiness because it cannot resist. What we do is we superimpose a limited identity onto our experience, and therefore we don't want experience to take place. And for some reason, we have created this form of identity that has a preference and it's rigid to that preference. And if it doesn't want that thing to happen enough, it creates resistance and it rejects and separates itself from experience. And it's in that separation that suffering takes place. You're not always suffering, right? Which is a perfect example of how there is unconditional happiness. It's just you have conditions as to what happiness is, because you do not understand what happiness actually is. You do not understand its significance. So this is why I'm here right now under this freaking tree, sharing the significance of happiness and what it actually is. Because the deeper you go into that, the more crystallized unconditional happiness will be in your experience, and therefore the more crystallized you will be in pure, unconditional, causeless peace and joy. If you want more guidance on this, like I mentioned, I have a free community. I host meditations every single week and all Q&As every single week. Click it, apply, and I will look forward to meeting you on our onboarding session together. Take care. Bye.